Oh, like on YouTube
Yeah, well, like
or
on
the
StreamYard,
computer? Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Saturday night sci-fi shadow chat. Yeah, I whipped that out without a stutter. Imagine that. Thanks again, Baron, for the title. Uh, as you guys can see tonight, we're going to be talking about psionics in tabletop role-playing games. Why people have such a uh, an issue with it. You know, um, and for those of you who are big fans of it, welcome to the show. That's what we're going to talk about for the next couple of hours. Maybe we can, ease your reservations about psionics and think about, maybe including them into your games. Uh, in sci-fi, it seems to be less of a big deal, especially with the 40K crowd. They don't seem to have an issue with it at all, which is weird because in the 40K universe on their fantasy world planets, psionics is really just magic and vice versa. And but yet in the fantasy world, psionics can do things, or magic can do things that psionics can't. And in the sci-fi world, it's different and not as powerful and not as mystical, but at the same time, they're you know often doing the same things, sometimes not. But what are your basic thoughts on it?
So it's a really big topic and introduction. Thanks, Shadow. It's hard to follow up, but really, I'll try not to get too philosophical about it. But um, Warhammer 40K, and as kind of like a fantasy, but I would say more sci-fi than fantasy. Really, I mean that's a very alchemical kind of setting because Warpstone really powers a lot of the magic, and psionics is kind of like adjacent to it, and there's a little bit of overlap, but it seems like the psionics in 40K, they go into a little bit more of a gnostic angle. Like eldritch stuff is really gnostic if you think about it. It's the beyond power. It's the knowledge behind the knowledge that is like the actual power behind universes. So I guess I would say that just overall, I mean, I just view psionics and things that are associated like telekinesis, telepathy, ESP, um, and other kinds of like physical manipulations and things. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could fit it into a world and explain it, or somewhat explain it. um I think that it was one of the first like power by point systems in third edition Dungeons and Dragons that I ever worked with. So that was kind of like the big thing that made it different from Magic, was that instead of it being a Vancian like remember and forget system, it was more of a
Mhm.
point system. And some people just kind of like, in my time, because I was running games in like the 1990s and 2000s, it felt very video gamey to some people, and some people that I played RPGs with kind of wanted to get away from that. So I think that might have been why they were a little bit more averse to it than other Magic systems. Um, and then just otherwise, I mean, other game systems like GURPS and Rifts and what am I thinking? Like Shadowrun. Um, I mean, it just kind of blends in with everything else. So, but yeah, I definitely have seen people that have been pretty averse to being in games and like interfering with what Magic does and all that kind of stuff.
It's funny because all the way back to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, psionics were a thing. You could, I mean, mind you, you were lucky if you had a 3% chance of actually having psionics in AD&D. If you had a higher intelligence, wisdom, and charisma in the 16 plus range, you'd get a couple extra, you know, fractions of a percent. You could get up to, I think, maybe a 6 or a 7% chance of having psionics. And in Palladium and Rifts, if you weren't a psionic character, you still had a 20% chance of having psionic abilities, and um, it's always gotten this strange bad rap. And I've read a lot of fantasy and fiction novels over the years, including the Marion Zimmer Bradley Darkover novels, which were um, at an early age for me very informative on. uh, I did too, buddy. Oh, you're right. I didn't. I'm sorry. Hunger, why don't you get your butt in here? I sent you the link. You can just, show off your good looks, and, you know, uh, for the ladies that are watching, they can have some eye candy. Um, stay as long as you like. Like I said, I sent you the link. There's some other people coming in, but like Kevin and I were talking about earlier, they may be too busy watching the hot air balloon stuff that's going on or getting ready for the Super Bowl. I get it. We'll probably stretch this out into next week also, especially since I know Bo can't make it tonight, and I really want to get his take on it because he's running a GURPS game that I'm in, and it's a lot of fun. And if my character dies, the next character I'm bringing in is a psionic. So just be ready, Bo. Just like the Carl from Starship Troopers. I want him just like that.
Yeah, there you go. It's afraid.
Right, because we are playing kind of a Starship Troopers like game, and it just sounds like fun, and it's not just the uniform. But
Yep, I agree. It it really spans a lot of different things because it really wasn't much of an idea before the early 1900s when you had people that would be doing illusion shows and those kind of things, and that was kind of where it got more popularized, and maybe it was in history before then, but I tried to do a little bit of research before today, and I didn't really see a ton. It didn't really even talk a lot about anything except for
right,
maybe
you're right about the 1900s when we had the seances and the
mhm,
spiritualists and the
yeah,
mediums. I look at all that stuff that could easily be, you know, uh, lumped into the psionics category. It doesn't have to always be magic. I wrote down a bunch of psionic abilities that I found from various game systems that a lot of times, like I was talking to somebody, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about the old monk in
mhm.
AD&D, and I know they have monks in other versions. After that, the monk had a lot of quasi psionic abilities. The whole mind over matter,
Yeah,
walking on coals kind of thing,
yeah.
deadening
So
pain.
I think that's more of like a what is it? Yeah, like a mastery of self,
Mhm.
Buddhist kind of
Yep.
uh, third eye. I would probably be the most historical kind of reference to something that would have to do with psionic power.
hmm And even our own government, going back to the 50s and 60s, we're studying things like remote viewing, and
Hmm.
I do a show with Nathan Allen on the paranormal and psychic abilities and Bigfoot and UFOs. So I've been studying this stuff since I was about 10 years old,
Hmm.
and so for me, it's like a no brainer to throw in some more weird crap into my fantasy or science fiction role playing games.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, folks out there in the chat. Maybe you can give me like your ideas of why it's like almost a taboo thing. There's people either hate it or just don't use it in
Hmm.
fantasy, but science fiction not a problem. Or
Science fiction is everywhere. I mean, like Star Wars is kind of the quintessential, like what would you say, mainstream sci fantasy. I mean, I think it's more science than fantasy, but it's still kind of
Mhm.
in that realm. And yeah,
Babylon
it fits in
5,
right there. And like what
Babylon
was it? like James says, or yeah, it's James. He said that he thinks about religious training for it. So yeah, I mean, it's like for me, it's a little bit more of a miraculous kind of thing. That's like one way that you can go about it, definitely.
Also, it was kind of widely used in Firefly. I said Babylon
Hmm.
5, Star Trek with the Vulcan stuff. It's been pretty common in science fiction
Hmm.
for let's just say the past 60, 70 years. But I just don't get why. I get it. People don't want to mix their tech with their fantasy with their tech. There's a lot of people from that,
It's a
that school
bridge
of
for
thought, so
sure.
to speak. Me personally, I do both. I love mixing them. That's, it's kind of the essence of Gonzo, especially since, I'm kind of a big superhero nut. Um, I don't like Marvel or DC anymore, in the last, way before the MCU, even though I did like the Iron Man movies.
Hmm.
Way back in the 90s, I stopped doing the comic book thing, but still liking and using the superhero genre that, incorporates everything into one genre: psionics, superpowers, bionics, magic, mutations. It's got it all. And nobody thinks twice about it. You got Doctor Strange next to Jean Grey, not a
Right,
problem.
right.
But as soon as you've got people walking around with pointy hats with stars and stabs and knights in shining armor, there can't be any of that
Yeah.
psychic mumbo jumbo. Now I could get it maybe on an evolutionary stance, where in those older, more primitive things,
Hmm.
they didn't have it. But if you look back into our own ancient history between the Hindus and the Aztecs and other ancient cultures, they had things that can only be, here we go, explained rationally
Hmm.
as psionic. What's happening, my brother?
Hey, Hungar, how are you?
What's up, guys?
So I know
There
you're
you
not a big fan,
go.
but how about why?
What?
I know you're
I
not a
think he
big fan of psionics. Maybe you can shed some light as to why, though. Why you think people are not a big fan of it?
I don't hate psionics. My thing is, if I'm playing D&D and there's magic, then I'm going to use magic. If I'm playing a sci-fi game, I'm cool with psionics. But like Charlotte just said, psionics become more OP as the game develops. Psionics can be very OP.
That's something I really didn't think about, but I think that's maybe uh, because of a lack of some sort of idea of play tested balance. Whereas Palladium, they've got both.
yeah,
In every book there's both, and Palladium doesn't give two wits about balance. They just don't care. It's not
yeah,
it's not a consideration. You can have your super powered, you can have your dragon in Rifts next to your psionic, next to your Borg, and next to your glitter boy pilot and your city rat, all in the same party. And you know the same with a lot of superhero games. You've got like the Fantastic Four. The Invisible Girl takes a bullet without her force field around. She's going down, and
yeah.
probably not going to be in a couple of episodes, or issues or what have you. Everybody else, they're going to probably be just fine. But there's no balance there.
Well, I think psionics also has a element of horror to it because there's a lot of the powers have to do with invasion of a space, like somebody's mind that is yeah. I think it's something that can have a horror element to it for some people. It's kind of a bit of a body horror kind of thing. Um, but I think that's more with the telepathy kind of things and like actual like seizing control of somebody, that kind of thing. It
Mhm.
seems that the stuff that's more acceptable seems to be the things that either somewhat manipulate or just can move and throw things around. That stuff
Sure.
seems to be pretty accepted. If you can kind of put it on the same level as like Mage Hand or something like that, just use a D&D example, then I mean it's a similar
Right.
it's a similar power level. And because I don't know, there are some people that play RPGs that care about balance, and I'm not one of them. So I'm cool with however it's implemented, and if you don't like how it's implemented, you can mess with the numbers yourself. That's
Real quick. Hey,
my
Hungar,
opinion.
are you muted? Oh, okay.
I think it was just letting me talk, but
Yeah, I'm muted. My phone's blowing up at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I never thought of the fear or horror aspect of it when I was doing my own research, but that is a good point. And it reminds me of the conversation I was having the other day with things like mind flayers and
Mhm.
actual demons and devils of the old days of the old books, AD&D again. Those creatures had them, and if you understood the rules, they were incredibly powerful.
Right.
The things that mind flayers and of course demons and devils could do when they had their psionics up and running, and they were of a certain potency, could wreck a player character party without even lifting a finger. I mean, literally. Uh, and I noticed that a lot of what made the mind flayers really scary in the old days was their actual psionic abilities. If you played them by the book,
Yeah.
the original player's handbook, psionic section, that's what was the scariest part about him. It wasn't there other, just stat blocks and things like that. Same with demons and devils, especially, when you start dealing with the upper echelons. They didn't need to go into hand-to-hand combat or even use their 2 and 3 times a day magical abilities. It's like,
Right.
no, I'm blasting you guys with psionics because I know you don't have any, and sucks to be you.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the themes too, is that like unless you are psionic, you don't have much of a defense against it.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah, just having, I think that that's part of the objection of playing with them, because it's kind of like GM magic, right? It's just like you can just kind of go in and you can mop up what you need to mop up if if you so desire as a GM. But personally, I would like a system better where everybody has some ability at least to defend themselves from those things, whether it's stat based, or maybe there are abilities that are make people more resistant or something like that. But I don't know. You get into some weird space, because a lot of this is kind of like hero on hero stuff. So it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's kind of the balance part of it. I think and you're talking about like those two categories of things, demons and cephalopods, I guess I would call them. There's not much you can do, and that's kind of the point. But uh I don't think your average like D&D board game player is ready for a more Gnostic eldritch kind of thing to contend with in the world. I just don't think that it's a really good fit for where they try to just plunk it down into D&D. I don't know if there are other sci-fi examples that you might have in games where it works out better, but yeah, for D&D it was just like it's an issue with the genre. It's like psionics doesn't really fit into the genre unless you kind of push it in when you start getting out into planner stuff and that kind of thing.
Right. I always felt that um, because one of the main defenses was, high intellect, wisdom, and charisma stats would help give you,
Some
some
saves
bonuses
and fifth,
for
yeah.
your abilities, so that, maybe your wizard or your priest might actually be able to, resist. that sort of thing. And Shadow makes a good point that Psionics really had no drawback or no cost other than, if you look at the usual tropes of the headache, the bloody noses,
Yeah.
and things like and the drain of it. If you incorporate those minor elements, then that can be a reason why you're not gonna blast off all of your psionic points, as it were, in combat or what have you. There, because you're right, there are very few, if any, actual magic items that protect against psionics, especially in the original Dungeon Master's Guide. Even the Unearthed Arcana, I can't think of a single item that did anything other than up your saving throws or intelligence and wisdom scores that might help you resist against those things. Uh, However, in later games, it really wasn't, other than like the Traveler, psionic helmet, there aren't a whole lot of, traditional defenses against it. And it also, makes for a perfect reason why psionic were so outlawed and hated in the gaming universes, is because they were that next level superpower that, every government feared and wanted to get their hands on. Even
Yeah.
in the real world, our government, the United States, have spent billions of dollars researching something that most people would just say doesn't exist. And yet, I get it. We pay $300 for a hammer. You know, so dumping some money into a black project, calling it
Yeah.
psychic research, sure, but
Military applications, like, of anything like that, I mean, it's kind of one of those, I'm trying to think of what that's called. It's kind of like a it's one of those situations where even if it only has a small percentage chance of actually helping or working or being true, that if you it's kind of like the stuff in like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's like, like the Axis is trying to get a hold of, like, what is it, ancient power that they don't understand. And I think that it kind of falls into uh that same thing, where if you are like a major government and there's this thing that could possibly be the thing that topples all other major nations, you're gonna look in the direction. You're gonna see if you can get there first. And it's kind of, it's gonna be very undercover, because it's not it's it's sacrilegious to some people. It's scary to a lot of people. It's misunderstood by a lot of people, your average person. So yeah, it's kind of like one of those why not projects, like the remote viewing. It is like the biggest one, I think, that had the most data and went along for the longest.
right, yeah, absolutely. I've been studying that on different levels for a very long time. You're getting a lot of those grinder messages there, Hungar. Hey, I'm just repeating what's in the chat, my friend.
Yeah.
He's a popular guy, on screen and off. My goodness,
There you go.
man.
But yeah,
Hey.
I don't know.
Hey, you guys
It's
in the
like
chat, settle down there now. Settle down.
Dwarf lords are in your area.
See, this is what
You
happens
know what's
when
crazy? Every time I move, those single hot ladies follow me around everywhere I go. I'm that.
Yeah, they're always in your area.
They're always in my area. I don't know what to do with it. It's like freaking crazy style and shit.
You got to get yourself some catfish repellent.
Yeah, there you go.
And hey, Crafty, how you doing tonight?
Crafty James, dorks.
Zero Option. Hey, man, long time no see.
What
Dude,
up, Zero
I was just
Option?
watching one of your videos the other night, dude. You're gonna have to come on the show one of these nights. We're gonna have to talk tanks.
You know what? If I won the lottery, I'd be the exact same as I am now, but I'd have a tank outside in my garage.
Yeah, make sure
if
you
you
get
guys
an.
haven't checked out Zero Option, Write down his handle. Go check him out. He does some great videos on one of my favorite sci-fi series, that being the Bolo series. Hey Joseph, what's happening, my friend?
Joseph,
And
what's up?
he does some incredible narrations too. Yeah, it's one of my guilty pleasures when I have the spare time and I'm not listening to, news, which I've really got to stop doing. James,
Yeah, I mean,
James
it,
has been trying to help me break that habit. My pleasure, Zero.
it's
Uh,
hard to figure out, like, when you, it used to be back in when I was younger, it was like Associated Press. It was very, like, here's the journalism, like, here's the stuff that's going, like, here's the stuff that's going on, here's interviews, here's footage. And it wasn't really slanted that much. And of course, there's always a little bit of a slant on what they decided to go cover, but that was kind of a decent source through like other media outlets, because, well, they have the money to get the Associated Press or subscriptions. That's basically what it is. It's like we're stuck, but we're stuck away from the news, and it got pushed through those channels. But now, it's like we have people that they do that same level of reporting on social media every day. So really, I think it would be interesting to figure out who are the journalists to actually pick up. I mean, Tim Pool was one of those journalists for a while, but now he's in studio. So now you got to figure out who are the people that are still out there in the field, like, actually, getting the real deal. And it's tough because those people change all the time.
yep,
And yeah,
and
it's not
everybody's
like
got a price.
most people cannot make a career out of journalism. It doesn't pay very well unless you're a propagandist. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
the nature of it.
Yeah,
But
if
yeah,
you're
I mean,
willing to make up the news, you can make a lot of money.
yeah. But speaking of, if you want to get get psionic adjacent, talk about like social engineering. I mean, that kind of stuff is going on right now. We got moral panics, or what is it? It is psychological contagions is actually the proper term for it. Where, yeah, you just got to get an idea that gets out there, enough people say it over and over, and now it's there's some level of it being real. That's the same thing that you would get with psionics. Like, if there were psionics out there, and there was only a few of them, that makes them a minority. It's very easy to just like, dehumanize and in some systems, I mean, people are dangerous in a way that is even, like I say, more terrifying than somebody that may be armed all the time, because they are all
Yep.
armed all the time. I mean, it's like a step up from the martial artist, right?
Yeah, and another thing we were talking about, is the many of the monks' abilities from AD&D and later editions had some very quasi, or if not full on, psionic like abilities. And
Mhm.
I always had in my fantasy worlds a, like, esoteric order, some sort of, not necessarily a cult, but like a monastery, or a psionics guild, trainers of
Mhm.
those abilities somewhere on my world, just
Yeah.
for the off chance that I needed to pull them out, or someone rolled psionics, and then these people in gray robes would come up to you. This was long before the prequel Star Wars movies, and they'd
Right.
try and help you out, and maybe convert you or get you to join their order, or things like that. But there are a lot of, I'm going to go over this list I made up of some of the abilities that I found that seem to be okay, people don't mind and sort of ignore the fact that that's, at least in my opinion, is what they would be is psionic abilities. You've got
Oh,
healing
zero,
abilities.
zero options. I just sub to you, man. Sub for a sub, brother.
See what a nice guy he is,
Yeah.
and Ungar, if you like sci-fi, you will, because he does a lot of like one of my favorite videos is when he had the Bolo tanks go into the 40K universe and he does these comparisons. It's a lot of fun.
I was talking about 40K today. The custodian, they're great, right? But when they're no longer at their prime condition, they retire from being a custodian. And a custodian's like a 10-foot tall total Chad. Chiseled chin, nothing but muscle, like 0.01% body fat. They retire from being a custodian and become a freaking spy. How are they not noticeable? They're 10-foot tall chiseled people. Yeah. They don't look like us, but they're spies. Yeah, see this 10-foot dude walking toward me. I wonder if he's not conspicuous at all.
Yeah, but they'd be probably on the recon side than the deep intel.
They should have thought that through a little bit better.
I don't really know what exactly the lore is behind them, but but the thing you got to remember though is that they would be able to be a spy in like a what is it like an ultramarine battalion or something like that.
If they were spying like other space marines, they'd be able to do it, but they're not going to fit in normal 40K society.
Oh no. Well, I mean, is there any normal 40K society though? I mean, this is kind of like one of those areas where I mean, there's probably worlds full of those people that are engineered that way, right? And like hive cities and that kind of stuff. But then you've got, there's lots of places where that isn't. But as far as I understand, if you are in a place that has a lot of like imperial, what would I say, coverage might be the best word to use for it. They kind of slap the paint on, and anything that doesn't look like it belongs usually goes in the furnace. Yeah, so
I mean, they would fit in on Terra. I think they'd be able to get around on Terra because Terra's used to.
Elfbait, I sent you the link. If you need, I can put it in the chat for you.
Elfbait, what's up, my brother from another mother?
Yeah, so but yes, I'm sure that there's plenty of the backwaters of shoot, I don't know a ton of GW lore stuff on the 40K side. Like
I know a lot.
I don't know what the I don't know if they call it the Empire, if they call it something
the Imperium
else. Yeah, but it's basically so the Imperium. I mean, if you're in a tightly controlled Imperial area, that's probably what it looks like. And if you're outside of that, I mean, it's probably a lot more like early Star Wars, what do you call it? Like early reality years, like early George Lucas stuff. So,
there you go, Al.
We've got
you know what the hell? Come on in, man.
Charlotte is a female 40K fan. That is awesome. Hi.
Yeah, Charlotte, she says, live in a pod, eat the bugs, own nothing, and be happy, I think is what she says.
Charlotte, like. How you doing?
Oh,
yeah, James Dell, the Bene Gesserit were an absolute perfect example of psychers in a sci-fi scenario. Hey, long time no see, man. Dude, if I would have known you were doing a superhero stream earlier, I would have been on. I was eating lasagna.
I sent you a link earlier today, Shadow, and you didn't join. This is the third stream I've been on today, so I'm not going to be on long because I don't.
Yeah, I had time to kill between getting off work and then my wife getting off work and cooking dinner, and I'm like, hey, I should do a stream, and so it was just an hour-long thing. Anyways, we're here to talk about your stuff on your stream, and we're talking what, psionics?
Yep.
All right, and evidently 40K.
Well, we're just we were kind of outlaying.
We can go back to talking about the balloon if you want.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. Thank you.
but yeah, but we really just kind of laid out like, psionics, where does it there's differences in origin, there's differences in acceptability in general, in the different base systems, whether it's in-game acceptability or player acceptability. So that was kind of what we're talking about.
Zero, the link is in the chat. Come on down. And you're going to have to give us a first name because I don't like calling you Zero, man. Sorry. I don't know if any of you have ever checked out his channel before, but before you leave, you got to go sub to his channel. So, Elf, I'll hit you up with the question. Why do you think Psionics gets such a bad rap in fantasy?
In fantasy? Because I feel like people just see them as a conflict with the concept of magic. And I think it just confuses people in general. What's funny is that we don't seem to see the same sort of flack when it comes to monks and key powers. But is a psionic monk not just a Jedi? So,
well, I think
and the funny thing is that psionics and fantasy are not some sort of newfangled peanut butter chocolate combo. They go back as far into the genre as you can go.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's an irrational grumpiness. I think it's honestly because the early psionic systems were just, at least in D&D, were just so clumsy.
Yeah.
And weird. And they work different.
I don't know about. I get the clumsy part. Once you sort of ironed it out and understood how the actual rules worked, because it was basically a point system.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's
and lo and behold, every other game in the universe went and just cleaned it up and used the same exact basic system. It costs this many points to activate your ability, and you're off to the races. Frederick, how you doing? You're back after a long time of being not dead. Well, yeah, that's kind of how that worked. Because if you came back from the dead, I think you'd be news at 11, if not news at 5, 6, and 7.
He was a zombie.
It's called being not quite dead yet.
I think being not quite dead yet is pretty much a descriptor for the average American nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't want to go on the card.
At least the average American that we would associate with, because we're like aging men mostly.
Yeah, I'm 51, so
yes.
55.
40.
Tony, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Tony from Zero Option, Sci-Fi Narration. Honestly, a phenomenal sci-fi channel. I honestly don't know how you aren't in the literally, like tens of thousands of subs with what you do.
Well, I'm looking to change
Can
that
you hear
actually because it looks. I can hear you guys.
Oh, you just said that you're looking to change it, but it sounded like you were going to say something else. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I can hear you.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm just running on Wi-Fi here, so it's a little sketchy. But yeah, I'm looking to actually change that because looks like YouTube actually killed that channel. So I'm actually swapping everything over to a new channel by the end of this month. So hopefully that gets a little bit more kick in the algorithm.
What happened?
I've honestly, I've got no idea what went on there, but from what I understand from a few friends I was talking to, that early on in my channel, I took a sort of a scatter.
I think we lost him.
Yeah, but it was a scatter shot method
stuff.
Yeah.
And it
cut out there.
It just kills me. It tells me it just killed me in the algorithm because at the beginning when I went scatter shot, trying to find my groove with. So
that makes sense because I know a lot of channels, like RPG channels, split off their real plays to a separate channel because it was messing with the algorithm for them to have real plays and then their commentary coverage.
Yeah, so I'm just
okay. Well,
hoping.
Keep me posted, man.
Sorry, go ahead. I will.
No, just
Absolutely
keep me posted with what you got going on. I will shout you out, morning, noon, and night, my friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anytime. Yeah. That explains why I haven't been getting notifications.
Oh,
Guys,
Yeah.
I'm going to bounce. I'm going to lay down.
Okay, Hungar, you take care.
later, man.
Later.
Have a good night there,
I'm
Hungar.
guessing I will see you tomorrow over on Connell's channel. I'm going to throw in the link for Squirrel because Squirrel needs some love.
Yeah.
He's another good friend of ours.
You guys are talking about Casablanca, and that is my favorite movie of all time.
Well, there you have it.
All right, later, guys. Peace,
Later,
love,
man.
peace, and
My
grease.
son and I are, you take care, Hungar. Pretty sure my son and I are going to have some pretty controversial opinions on that movie. Squirrel, there's the link, my friend. So Tony, what do you think about psionics in sci-fi games?
Well, when it comes to psionics, it honestly depends on like times I've played. If the groups are comfortable with it, yeah, but we always try to put a cap on on use.
Most rule systems that I'm familiar with do kind of have some sort of limitation on number of times of day or psionic points or things like that.
We try to.
Yeah, even when you're like using a magic system, that's also the case.
Oh, hey, I'm here. Yeah.
Welcome to the show. I was expecting Squirrel, but you snuck in and swiped Hungar.
Well, hey, free fame and fortune is the best kind of fame and fortune.
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put in-universe limiters on psionics too, like not just mechanical ones. I know way back when I made a homebrew Aliens game for D6, for the old D6 West End system back in the day. I wanted to introduce a psionic NPC in there, sort of that very gritty, limited, hard sci-fi sort of psionics where we call them espers, which is a term I'm sure you've seen in old sci-fi. And in this case, they were highly regulated, and they had cybernetic implants on their heads that lit up like an LED every time they were using their abilities.
Well, I should say, as far espers don't kill people, people kill people.
But yeah, so that was an in-universe way of creating a limiter on psionics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think any power, ability, or what have you should just be like the new cantrips, just free all day long. That's just that's playing a video game and just smack freaking
I like to say. Like I like to say, 5th edition is one of the best superhero systems they ever made.
Well, and that can work if the game's built for that.
Yeah.
I mean,
my argument with 5th edition is that they they have a extremely high magic and I would say superhero kind of platform, but you see the modules that they come out with, and it's like everything is just so like underpowered for what those kinds of things can or those kinds of parties can deal with. And it just really, for me, it doesn't really fit the vibe. Like if you had people that could literally shoot a fireball every 5 seconds, they'd be working in construction somewhere.
Well, it's been the constant argument with fantasy RPGs anyways, is like, why is it that you have all of this free-flowing magic everywhere and it still looks like
medieval
land?
Yeah, because
in all fairness, it's like not Eberron. Was it Eberron? There was like that one setting they had like 3rd edition that did answer these questions and made it like steampunk or something.
Yeah, Eberron was written with the idea of what would an actual fantasy world look like with access to all of that stuff.
Yeah,
but it was also the first original D&D world in decades, or officially published original world, and it was made by a contest, which is really cool. So
is there like a way to like I'm always curious. Is there ever a way to see like the runner ups or something? Because I'd like to see those. Like they might be terrible, but I want to see. I want to see what they were.
As far as I understand it, Eberron is the winner plus some elements from the 2 runners-up written into a universe.
And I think the runner-ups for things that were actually published by at some point, maybe it's just TSR for some of the stuff, but Dark Sun and well, I mean, really, Mystara kind of is a great setting. It's just kind of got forgotten because of all like most things, like legal squabbles between people rolling dice and writing words on paper and
well, I think he was
something
referring
every once in a
specifically
while.
to the runners-up for the contest that produced
Yeah.
Eberron, because Mystara and Dark Sun predate Eberron by decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were made by ancient liches or something. I don't know.
But yeah, I would bet you that some of those runners-up probably exist as third-party content in other game universes. But I don't know. I'm sure that information is probably out there in the deep lore. It's just not important enough to me to where I ever looked it up.
So. And then there's that Matt Mercer thing that nobody I know bought, and I guess there's a campaign setting there.
Well, I think people bought that. It's just they're just in different circles.
Yeah, they're sitting on coffee tables everywhere we aren't.
Yeah, coffee tables, and was like bougie, overpriced. Just I did it before it was cool, and even though they only did,
they definitely didn't.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm actually looking for a couple of those coffee table books. Any guys remember the Terran Trade Federation books?
I remember wanting them. I remember an adult friend in my childhood having them and going and loving to go visit that particular set of family friends, because then I would pour through his collection. So
yeah, about $100 a book right now.
I know.
I will get them. I already spent my monthly budget on books this month. I picked up a couple of books by Total Party Skills. I picked up the first 2 Deadlands books, and I picked up the AD&D 2nd edition Psionics Handbook, hoping to get it in time for the show, but just didn't happen. It'll be here next week. That's why we'll do a part 2 of this next week, so I can do a little bit more gamey research. But I wanted to talk about some of the abilities that I discovered in game books that are clearly psionic, but can be obtained by non-psionics, or so it seems, whether it be Pathfinder or AD&D or D&D or other games that I've noticed. I already mentioned the healing, and there's meditation, different types of biofeedback, mind over matter, like the walking on coals kind of thing, the suspended animation or resistance to elements like heat and cold weather, which I know I don't have, because if I go outside right now, I'm going to be a wreck. Night vision could be considered one. Astral projection is kind of a big one, but I mean, there's all kinds of people in the real world that have pretty much done it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I think part of the I think part of the whole thing with psionics is like it's I would say that it's one of the least defined categories of mysterious things that happen in RPGs, and really I think that there's, I just don't want to get too like technical about it, but there's ones that are based in alchemical things, there's ones that are based in hermetic things, there's ones that are based in Gnostic things, and then there are things that mostly come from some level of what is it, like religious mythology, and all of those things, but all of those things will get thrown into the same basket, and it's like I think that's the big difference, even in just like a game like D&D, is if you could have those delineations, and they kind of do with the fifth edition classes, because they have wizards, which are Vancian magic, they have warlocks, which are pact magic, they have druids, which are I would say something close to a
Primal,
pagan
yeah.
magic. I put it in like an anima. Well, and then you even have the barbarians, which have mostly been put into an animus bucket, and then you have monks that have been are mostly in the Gnostic bucket, and trying to think if I missed any. Hermeticism really is more. I mean, if there were any that were kind of closer to it, it would probably be artificers.
Yeah.
But that's not like a perfect fit, because a lot of stuff in Hermeticism is more like, I mean, you would have some things that would be a bit more like woo psionics than material psionics. Hermeticism would give you some of those mind over matter things.
Yeah. For me,
What
the
about
big
some of the combat things, like sixth sense and danger sense, and lie detection and presence sense and combat reflexes? A lot of those can easily be explained with psionics.
Yeah, I think that all gets lumped under that mind over matter thing. You know,
Yeah.
if you look at the Dune, I heard you guys mentioning Dune earlier. If you look at the Dune concept, so much of that is just gaining mental control over your body
Yeah.
and your, even down to your body chemistry. I think that for me, the one thing that's always delineated psionics from magic, in my head at least, is that psionics often have this air of more of a scientific approach to
Yeah.
power as opposed to magic. Even the most like academic form of magic still is spells and books and potions and bubbling, and whereas psionics are like they're that thing that we just maybe understand if we study it enough, and
Right.
it can be obtained by anybody with enough dedication and devotion. That's sort of the Dune angle, humanity
Yeah.
taken to its ultimate extreme.
So what?
More than
Right.
it's more the Gnostic angle, and then you've got like Mentat computation. That's another thing that you could probably throw
But that's
into
still just
psionic power.
training your brain
Yeah.
to
Well, it's the same thing, but
Yeah.
but yeah, that's just
There's something called a parapsychology, which is basically like more of a study of intuition, more or less, and I was basically a psychological trying to explain all the weird stuff that like you can't really explain from a scientific rather than a religious point of view.
Yeah.
I can't say that that it's all true, but I've read their journals and whatnot. I don't remember exactly what they said, but they were definitely onto something. Like I've seen some weird stuff. I'm really not surprised by anything at this point, even New Mexico.
I'd say parapsychology. Yeah, I mean that's an attempt to apply science to the unknown and the paranormal.
That's actually one of my secondary hobbies. I actually started studying that, from UFOs to psychic abilities and Bigfoot long before I was playing role-playing games, 40 plus years now. And every topic, every word leads down its own separate rabbit hole. That's why I wanted to bring that, before you guys tonight, and get some ideas how the gaming world, looks at it. Personally, I tend to view it as, like you were saying, like the sort of next evolution of humanity, or brains in general, because even animals have some unique abilities that could be kind of, attributed to some sort of psychic like mental abilities that don't necessarily have to, be all that, mystical or even surprising. If you think about sonar and radar,
Instincts.
that's a thing that animals have, but we now can make machines that can do the same thing. Well, if we can make machines that do it, it's only a matter of time before people are going to be able to do it. Whether you put a chip in their brain, no thanks, Elon. Don't be
Biotech,
stealing
man.
my idea. What?
Biotech,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll just grow
we're gonna
some
become
bat organs and put them in my head.
yeah. The
Sure, why not?
Cyber Psycho Batman Daredevil. Gotta look out for that guy, man. Not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, exactly. So who's to say that it's not, actually happening, and been happening for a very long time, and the people out there that can do those things actually can do those things, and they're not crazy, and you don't need to, institutionalize them because they believe in those things. Admittedly, there are charlatans and and con artists out there that have been claiming to do these things. They can't do these things. But then there are other people that, we've all got that weird aunt or uncle or granny that just knows stuff that, you just
all the
you
women
still
in
to this
my
day-
family are supposedly psychically attuned, according to my aunts and my grandmother. They like see ghosts and feel things, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Not that I believe in it necessarily, but it's just like that's what I grew up with. It's like,
well,
yeah.
I mean, I believe in that. Like if I go, if I go to this sounds crazy, so I won't go into much detail about that. But if, I go to a body of water and it's very quiet, usually have to go this pretty early in the morning. I can definitely feel some very weird things. I don't want this is about RPGs and not reality, so I won't go into any further detail. But I've some weird things have happened before. I'm, like I said, not surprised about anything.
that's kind of part of the discussion. Don't feel weirded out or embarrassed. If you do, come on over to Nathan's channel afterwards, and you'll feel right at home. Because the idea for psionics had to come from somewhere, and throughout history there have been things that can only be described as psionics because they're not, they don't fall into one of the magical categories. Whether people can actually teleport and do some of the crazier things that are in other, like Traveler, teleport. As a psionic ability, that's just so overpowered. You arrive naked, but you know what? That's a small price to pay. You know what I mean?
I feel like a lot of there's a lot of room for even taking into account just along the scientific approach, mutation, genetic throwback, and not in the X-Men mutation thing. Like evolution,
Right.
if is a constant series of trial and error, and we know, or at least we're pretty sure that at some point in our history we had sensory perception beyond what we have now, just by the nature of our environment, and what we had to live in it, and a lot of what we had is leftovers. But who's to say that those people with special abilities aren't that the genetic code trying something new, and if it takes, it takes. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
That's kind of my philosophy when it comes to psionics, is that there are probably a whole lot of things yet to come for our species, and why not fantasy species and the animals and the fish and the birds and all those things out there, they do things that we can't do, and to just sort of gloss over it, to me, just doesn't feel right. I mean, not just the sonar and the radar, but certain animals' abilities to their vision and their ability to smell and the whole myths about dogs and seeing spirits and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, but I've been there, done that.
This is why
why would those even exist if there wasn't some element of truth somewhere? It might be a microscopic kernel of truth, but maybe there is in fact something to some of those stories, and most of us are just
Either that or it's a lot of drugs.
Well, it could be that too.
Definitely a lot of
But
mushrooms.
Or a
Definitely
combination
Yeah.
thereof.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why Dune exists.
there's even that whole the whole mushroom evolution concept where our
Oh,
big
the stoned ape theory.
yeah, the stoned ape theory. I can't remember what the actual term is. And I mean, there's a certain logic to it too, based on some of the science that they've done with psychoactives and stuff like that. So, but I think the thing that in my head, in my mind, where psionics as a concept and a delineation in terminology comes in is when people really started to try to legitimize special powers in real life. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's I remember doing a report when I was a kid about how modern alien abduction, and extraterrestrial stories and theories are just the modern scientific iteration of fairy stories.
Yeah.
Sure.
You've got time loss, you've got abduction, you've got hybridization / changeling, you've got
Mhm.
strange circles in the woods, weird lights. It's all parallels. And then if you track back even further, that then parallels like native spirits and all of that stuff. The stories are always there throughout history. So similarly, we had spirituality, then we had magic, and then we started getting into, well, we can't believe in that stuff. We have to make it science. It's psionics.
Yeah, I feel like there is there is more to intelligence than just IQ. Just IQ, I've met way too many people that are more so just slaves to logic, more or less.
That's where the wisdom stat comes in.
Yes. That's where your average college professor comes in, especially humanities. No good. No good.
I love the humanities.
I'm sorry to hear they got to you, man. I think we need. Sorry, I think we need to put them down.
Yeah, you know what, Crafty? That for the longest time, that's probably exactly what it was that people in the old days thought it was witchcraft. But as time went on, it seems like somewhere they branched off. Probably my guessing is because when people tried using Eye of Newt and frog legs and things like that, that stuff didn't work for whatever
Tastes
reason
good.
in the real world. you know, uh, spells and all that sort of thing. I'm guessing somewhere around the early 1900s that the people that got a hold of those books really weren't having any luck with it. But then other things that you didn't need ingredients for and rituals and things like that, just a bit of meditation and inner focus,
Potion
those
medicine. It's like
right.
Yeah, like the main difference between the two is that one makes pharmaceutical companies a bunch of money. That's the main
well, I'm
difference.
sure people made plenty of money on potions at one point too.
Yeah.
Whether that was
yeah.
coinage
Well,
or in
salesman.
chickens, you still made money.
There's
Yeah.
pretty.
Or they
There's
fry
Or
plenty of-
social
or,
clout.
it's spicy.
There's plenty of public domain pharmaceuticals that, well, nobody's going to go to those first. Nobody's going to point you to those first because nobody's getting paid to point you to them.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it too, I mean, currency comes in other forms too. So, like, the shamans had a lot of social clout. It's also interesting that if you look at shamanic traditions throughout various cultures, they also tend to lean heavily into those folks that we would at some point throughout the history after we leave that stage consider to be infirmed or insane or touched or special, neurodivergent, whatever term you use. Those were often who became the shamans, and sometimes they might just be somebody with a physical infirmity, because it's funny because it almost parallels the nerd thing. I'm not coordinated and I'm not strong, so I'm smart. If I've got a gimpy leg, and that means that I'm going to get left behind when the tribe moves on to follow the mammoths, but I can really apply my brain, they're going to make sure I travel and I get fed. And then I'm going to be perceived as being special, or maybe it's just my perception. I know there was a research that was done once on luck, They found out that people with luck had 3 characteristics. They were more perceptive, they were more dynamic, and they were more intelligent. They didn't have luck. They made luck. They could recognize a situation. They could figure out how to capitalize on it, and then they had the dynamism to take that initiative and capitalize on it. Luck is magic, right? But it's all vested in your ability to, recognize, figure out, and take advantage of an opportunity.
And anything that would be in history that would kind of be like psionics. I mean, there's a lot of parallel pharmaceuticals. Like, you're the person that understands, the barks and the things that help people to get well and that kind of thing. And I mean, that might as well have been magic. And really,
that comes with being the thinky guy in the tribe.
Yeah. One of my historian friends, he always points out to me that the most outstanding thing about Native Americans was that they had the best pharmaceutical knowledge of anybody in the world. I guess modern pharmaceuticals have kind of caught up, but there were just all kinds of these they were much closer to a symbiotic kind of relationship with certain plants and remedies and things that most of the rest of the world, they were kind of behind on that. Some Chinese had engineering, the Europeans mostly had. It just seems like they had a social advantage, in terms of structuring government and imperialism and that kind of stuff. And almost everybody has had like a something that was like so outstanding culturally, and a lot of that stuff's been preserved, even though some people don't think so, but it has.
I think that sorry, did get hit in the head. Sorry. So I think that the reason for all that religion, if you looked over the history, the vast majority of people were religious. A lot of them have had experiences that back up said religion. Like, statistically speaking, how can all of without really going into the theological debate territory, but the kid, they gotta just have
okay, man.
They had to come out, they had to come from somewhere.
Mushrooms.
What'd you say?
I said mushrooms. I was just messing around.
A good portion of that is just the hardwiring of our brain is geared towards belief and pattern recognition to help keep us alive. Stories and the ability to imagine helps bond us together as beings, just socially, and then pattern recognition helps us recognize stuff. You put those two things together, and that hooting owl in the forest is a spirit. Those knotholes in a tree are the face of the forest god. I mean, it all comes down to a lot of the stuff that we and that kind of ties into psionics, I guess, too. Is like so much of what we consider intuition and so many of the origins of our spirituality are based on things that are hardwired in our brain, that it stands to reason that if that hardwiring continues on that same trajectory, that it might develop into something else.
Well, the strange thing about a lot of those circuits is that they involve a social interaction. Some of the psionic stuff that we've been talking about has been internal, but a lot of things, when it comes to something that you could demonstrate, some of it is it's in the realm, and this is like in my RPG system, this is where I've tried to keep certain skills apart from each other. You have skills that are things that you do, and then you have skills that have to do with communication in some way. It's like some kind of, it really is social skills, because you're not doing them unless there's other people there.
Yeah, it's like
and
they
yeah,
talk about
it's
people
like
who
so.
are very empathic are
Mhm.
often victims of trauma,
Yeah.
too, because they've learned to recognize dangerous situations.
Yeah.
My brother was telling me a story the
Yeah.
other day. He's in the kind of in the professional circles when it comes to employment, and he has this great knack for getting out of companies before they belly up.
Yeah.
And he's talked to some folks and they're like, "How do you do that?" He's like, I grew up in an unstable household and I got really good at
Yeah.
recognizing when things were going bad.
And this is why in my
So,
system, perception is a core stat. There's a reason it's the best skill in D&D is because I think it's a stat.
yeah. So, yeah, I can without going into that long a story. Yeah, when I talk about feeling that those things by the creeks, what I felt was babies. Sorry, not babies. People who didn't no longer had a pulse. Like I know, I mean, it's not voices in the head. Trust me, I know what those are. Those
Okay, now
are.
you're
But
scaring me.
these were a lot longer, and they didn't produce a sound or a sight. I just sort of felt what they were saying. They were saying, and like I feel like, and like the reason for that was I mean, what doesn't kill you? I don't entirely agree with what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It has the opportunity and gives you the opportunity and the will to make you stronger. Because I've met some people who've been through things that could have made them stronger, but were told by I don't know society or their parents or police or psychologists or whoever to become weaker, and
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
weaker, and so some of them didn't. A lot of them are in med hold and were kind of dangerous, risk. But yeah, but for those who choose to become stronger, well, they do. Which it brings me on to a kind, and which is why I think I feel the things that I do over by the creeks when I pray using a ring that fell from the sky. This thing. Okay. This is not a story I'm going to be telling in public, but trust me, this thing have seen some.
Don't worry,
things.
nobody watches this show.
Good. No one's going to tell anyone about the drugs. But yes, on a somewhat related note.
What are you talking about?
On a somewhat related note,
Gavin,
gentlemen.
you're killing me, man. Nah, he's just messing around.
Yeah.
We kid around a lot here.
Oh yes,
we try to be serious, but that just somehow that eludes all of us.
Yeah. Do you think that barbarian rage is real? I have my answer. I just want to hear what you would think.
Barbarian rage real?
Or more so berserker rage. Do you think that do you think that's real? Like do you
I think that you can get yourself psyched up into an alternate state and pumped up, and that pharmaceuticals don't hurt in the situation. We all know that, there are, all you have to do is, if you want to believe in berserker rage, is look at somebody on PCP.
Yeah.
Just look
and
at
then imagine discovering PCP or its equivalent growing on the side of a tree and figuring out that when you chew that stuff and then go into battle, you feel no pain and you're not listening to your body when it tries to limit your strength. Because statistically, we're capable of a lot more strength than our body will let us go through. Because our pain receptors tell us to stop before you actually hurt yourself. So yeah, I would say rage in the sense of like D&D's, barbarian rage is potentially real.
And for sci-fi, you got StarCraft stim packs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a veteran, but I've talked to soldiers who say that
I am.
Yeah, and
I can tell
Tony,
you,
from Zero, he is a veteran, and he's saying it is in fact a real thing. I know.
I don't know.
From other experiences.
I don't know if you guys have seen that newer show Wheel of Time, but very early in it, I think it's a couple episodes in. There's a character that there's a combat. It's one of the reasons that communication is really important in like a firing team and that kind of thing. When you're doing things like house clearing and that kind of stuff, because if you are so pretty much altered state at that point, and something moves, and you didn't know that it was somebody that is playing on your team. I mean, like like crossfire issues and people accidentally hurting or killing people that are in their own unit.
Hey, I've never been a soldier or anything like that, but even almost happened to me. I came home on my 27th birthday way too late, was rattling at the door, let myself in. The first thing I heard was my roommate's the slide on his pistol go back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, it's me. And the funny thing is,
Mhm.
in that moment, you're talking about psychics and extrasensory perception. I knew exactly whose gun it was, what room they were in, and who to call out to, because we had like 5 roommates, and I was the
Right.
only one who didn't own a gun. So, and it turns out it was a circumstance where, like, after I had left the house that day, some people had showed up and given him a hard time, and the car that drove me home that night was the spitting image of the car that these guys had got out of. So, like, my best friend since junior high could have shot me, except for, in that moment, things moved real slow, and I got real smart real fast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm a civilian through and through, but I totally understand. I've had a gun pulled on me 3 times in my life, all by friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is perception related. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of like heightened perception stuff.
Sorry, can I interrupt real quick?
Of course.
Yeah. Two things. One, Justin Thor LPs. In that same vein, the Starship Trooper movies have no relation to Robert Hunt in any way, shape, or form. They're all skinny propaganda, and nothing to do with the Honorable Federation in any way, shape, or form. And two,
agree.
Back to Berserker Rage. This is gonna be a weird story, but I just want to tell. Sorry, but yeah. All right, so you see, all right, but you see, all right, so back at my home, I was not living with very low standards of living, and my sister, and while we did have enough food to go around most of the time, and my sister just usually is spiteful. And so she destroyed anything she couldn't get her hands on. So one day, I found 5 inches worth of Subway leftovers. Went as far away as I could eat that before, or she could. And so I ate it. Found a sleeve of Oreos. I found a thing of Oreos on the ground. It had a sleeve left. I figured, well, yeah, this is my dinner done. And so I ate it. And however, there was this one guy in a U.S. Army t-shirt, and he was just yelling about how his broke ass and whatnot in the slums nonetheless. He was a weird guy. Anyways, and it's like, hey, yeah, and then I just hey, and then he just charged at me. So I was so hungry that that long story short, I won at 15. Like I had to tell him that, ask him if he was going to jail over cookies. But I won. He respected. He later on he won. Said that he no longer had a son. On two, he respected that he was an Army Ranger, so he clearly knew what he was doing. Weighing in 3. He respected me so much he just bought me no other thing in Oreos. Double stuff nonetheless. So yes, and that's how so being hungry can do some crazy things. Even it's granted it is possible they do is lying.
It's another form of
survival is a great motivator.
Yes. Yeah, it was feast or famine. Famine when
at the same time being super pissed off can also do that too. I remember when I was young and stupid and getting in a huge argument with my mother. Now she started it, but she slammed a kitchen door in my face and I went to stop the door, but my arm went through the plate glass peak window in the door, and when I pulled my arm back, there was a piece of glass stuck through my ski jacket all the way down to my bone, and I just looked at it, I'm like, ow. And I didn't feel it, and like of course, because I was all pissed off, and of course her demeanor completely changed. She went from like, "Get out of my house" and "I hate you" to like, "Oh my baby," but but it's
my glass covered baby.
But yeah, as soon as I calmed down, that thing ached and it just screamed, and
Exactly. I want to welcome Dustin to the show. Tony,
Hello.
the link's still there if you want to come in. How you doing?
Good. You? You guys?
What's your take on Psionics tonight
Um,
in the tabletop universe?
I've never used them in a fantasy game, but I generally like them. I think that some of the mechanics I've heard have been poorly executed. If I was writing a game, I would not write them the way I've seen them written.
That's Rule Zero,
I
though.
think that's
You just kind of
something we can all probably agree on.
Like,
you can kind of change whatever you want, but yeah, I mean it's not easy. It's like play testing, It's like
I could easily see a way to make it a use as many times as you want, right? Like in B5, there was this thing called the mind quake that the telepaths would suffer from if they pushed too far, and it would be easy to implement that with like if you roll a 1, you got to roll to see how much damage you take, and it could be up to and including death. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've got a friend who's a real expert on the Rollmaster system, and that's actually a system where stuff like that, when it comes to like your capacity starts to affect your ability to do things, and it kind of it's what's the word? It's cumulative until you rest or replenish it somehow or something like that.
Like
that sounds like it's kind of like a push-pull system, like the Lord of the Five Ring or Legend of the Five Rings old system.
Just off the top of my head, if I was writing a game right now and I wanted to include that, I would have it a D6 to use anytime you wanted to, right? But if you're like brand new at it, you'd need to get a 6 to use it, and 5 to 2 would be a fail, and 1 would be a quake. But if you want to re-roll right away, it would be a 2 or a 1 would be a mind quake, and so on and so forth up until you just can't do it anymore because it's either death or succeed, right?
No.
Yeah, but that was just off the,
you can build it with a more predictable curve too. I know, like for example, in Chaosium system, once you run out of power, you can start burning hit points to power your magic or mental powers, depending on what kind of a system you're playing in that one. So you can build that fatigue push in there and we see that all the time in media with psychics. So they're like, oh, and they're starting to sweat and their heads, their veins are bulging out and they're really stressing. And that's when, that reflects that pretty well.
Yeah. It wouldn't be like a guaranteed death, right? Say like if you rolled a 1, you then roll a percentile to see how much you hit. And like if you rolled 1 damage, it would be like a nosebleed. Or 100, you're probably not surviving that.
Yeah, well, in Chaosium, for example, the standard rules for going unconscious or dying would still apply as you're draining off your hit points to power your psychic powers.
This is 2023. About 96% of characters never die, so you don't really have to.
Life insurance is an all-time low.
In my world, everybody dies at the age of 5.
I mean,
you aren't dying, you're not dying.
I know, like, for example, when they implemented the mentalism system in Star Frontiers, they just made them skills, along with the regular skill tree that you would have. You'd have to have you had to have a mental stat, for your psychic power, potential power, and then everything was just skills with the same percentile base that you had for other skills.
But that again is just like because psionics have been treated in so many different ways. I mean, there's all kinds of different approaches, and how much they actually affect things, and so in some systems they're kind of just like an afterthought. It's like this little thing that you can do, and it doesn't. I mean, maybe it's got a very significant at some point in the story, but it's a little quirk. Or there are systems where it's like you're the Phoenix.
Oh yeah, like when I ran that D6 aliens, the only powers that Espers could have were very much sensitive powers. There wasn't any telekinesis. You could get some limited psychometry, some ESP.
We even get a little. Oh, good.
The straight thought, basically.
We even get just a little bit of that. If I had to think of a character where it was kind of like a touch, it would be like the Betazoids in Star Trek. Where they have a bit of that empathic ability, but
Vulcans even with the
mind. And Vulcans with the other way they go.
The Betazoids could read full mind. It was only because what's her name?
She was a half.
Halfling. That's why she couldn't read emotions.
I was trying to figure out a nice way of saying it, but she was of mixed heritage.
She was a hybrid.
I'm sorry, gentlemen, but something came up. I got to go deal with that. First, though, I do want to say
it was a pleasure having you here.
Just one quick thing that I got to say before I go. Yeah.
Okay.
If your system is a dipole system, that's the how much psychic stuff can you do fixed right there. Like in the system that I'm making, this is not the book to it. It's just the book that inspired it. Indian Warriors and Their Weapons by Hofstad. It's not Grey Wolf Morrow. That's how you do it. They were very famous for being psionics and whatnot. Not exactly. You know what I mean. All right, but yeah. See you everyone. That's Cherokee for hello and goodbye. All right.
Have a great weekend, my friend.
All right, you too. What though? Oh, for having me. Thank you for having me. Bye.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Interesting kid.
Yeah, there's just, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things too. I mean, it's almost like we all have our own systems. I mean, everybody looks at books and plays the game. Some of us play it closer to the stuff that's in the book than others, and there's always room for more implementations. But some of them that really, that was the biggest turnoff for the people that I played with, was that it was in third edition D&D Psionics. It was like, it was just because it was a point system, it was too much like a video game, and I think that's just a cultural
that's a holdover from the
coincidence
too.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. I'm not a huge fan of point systems generally. If I want to play a video game, I've got a really good computer.
Right. Yeah. By that you mean you've got this many points to spend on your abilities per day, and when you run out of magic or energy or whatever.
So it was like
like Palladium, for example.
Yeah, it was kind of like
Palladium.
Like Diablo.
It was like it's almost like divine, or I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, but it's like divine spellcasting, but there are some things that take more power than others. Is kind of how I saw psionics in third edition. And in fifth edition, I mean, you've got basically the two that would be the closest to psionic powers, the monk and the sorcerer, and they're the ones that are using point systems. And I think it actually fits pretty good.
Fifth edition still has yet to fully embrace psionics. They just have certain things. Like if they have psionics, they just get to do magic, but break the rules of the magic system.
Yeah, like the new Githyanki's are like
mage hand, but they don't need any components, and it's invisible.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's like they kind of merged it with.
I think in D&D's case, they've never been able to really reconcile a good way to do psionics and not have it seem like
there was crystal. There was the crystal bases, and those started to get more prominent as they got to high level psionics, which I don't know how many people actually ever played them. But it was like psionic crystals, and it became more of like a focus. So more kind of like a this word has a weird connotation now, but a fetishist kind of system where it was like
where
they
you
had
have like
I know
they
what
had
you're
to
talking
have
about.
the right stuff to be
Yeah.
able to do it, like the
You
right
know, a
focus.
Your rabbit
focus-based
foot.
psionics.
You know, it's funny you guys mentioned that because I'm actually getting ready to do an experiment with actual psychic abilities and actual crystals with some help with some friends out there. I'm going to do a as close to a scientific test as I can. I'm going to do all the things that are recommended. I'm going to buy some crystals and see what I can get to, you know, actually happen. I have no real, you know,
You go on the full Wiccan route.
Yeah, you know, no set results, you know, hoping for. I've had some weird experiences in my life, but
Swamp
you know,
gas.
right. I don't know exactly, you know, what to expect, and you know, I'm gonna try it out. But the whole idea of crystals is strangely been tied to psionic abilities for as far back as I can remember, and maybe that's something that would like Hungar says here. It's not enough penalties in psionics. Well, maybe not just maybe by having penalties. You know, like a lot of like spellcasting games, if you try to use it and you make a crappy die roll, something unfortunate happens.
Well,
maybe
that's why I suggested the Mindquake thing. Because and
Yeah, that could be different drawback.
as low as a nosebleed, as high as you're out of the game.
Yeah.
Well,
I think crystals and science and psychic powers got mixed together because crystals, you know, have their resonance, and that just I think really like sings to a lot of.
It's very Hamitic.
Yeah, it's like, well, I vibrate and they vibrate.
It's not any crystal.
Sorry, a good chunk of my mom's whole family on her side is all California, terminally Californian.
It's expensive crystals.
Same here. I'm also thinking that maybe they should be like the equivalent of a spell component to make it to make a really solid game system where they use them. Because I have a one game called I forget what it's called, like Psychic World or something like that, from Fantasy Games Unlimited. The people who put out the Cheeto and Villains.
I think they built some of that into the Beyond the Supernatural psionics for Palladium, like, you know, ley lines and then crystal foci.
Yeah, ley lines is another one. Like that. Well,
vortices.
You know, most prominent in Palladium, and I've heard of a couple of people I've talk about like being, I can't remember what the class was that was like specifically kind of geared towards ley lines.
Because it is Irish mythology, isn't it?
I don't know if it's actually Irish. I think it may be one of those modern spiritualism concepts that was then attributed to older religions.
That's a hard one for me to.
You know, like those Victorians who wanted to say that everything was ancient, but they just made it up.
Right. Well, that was the Mesmerist movement, right? Like,
it was everything in you know, it was the Victorians, like, these ancient ruins that I built Tuesday.
Not even last Tuesday. Next Tuesday.
A lot of fake archaeology.
I want to address this comment I've got highlighted by Crafty because he says, I just fail to see the difference between psionics and sorcery. Both are manifested powers and not learned. What do you mean by sorcery? Because when I hear sorcery, I don't use it like the more 3rd and 4th and 5th edition offshoot of magic users.
Right. Because that has mostly to do with like a hybrid bloodline is mostly what those come from.
Right.
Well,
right.
and I have heard the term sorcery used to delineate from actual magic pre-D&D though.
Yeah.
And it often is in that, though most of those terms are all interchangeable. I mean, at one point, necromancer just meant an evil wizard.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I always thought of it as just closer to witchy kind of magic as opposed to Merlin kind of magic, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, and I think that's generally the distinction, is that sorcery is something that is less academic
Mhm.
and
And
more
potentially,
Yeah, it's less
from
arcane,
within.
more pagan or animist.
See,
But I think
or
the difference
evil.
there
Yeah.
between sorcery and psionics again goes back to really just sorcery is still generally conceived of as shaping arcane energies, even though it's going without book learning, whereas psionics is very much that power from within you, not from external. Psionics
Right.
are almost
Right.
always channeling the energies from you or your coexistence with the universe. Like I said, that weird pseudoscientific aspect of psionics as opposed to magic, or
Yeah.
which sorcery kind of falls into.
I would also limit the way it can be exercised. Like as I was saying, if I were writing a game, I'd limit the way psionics are being exercised. The stray thought, the moving of an object.
Also,
N-
Crafty,
no, no creating
I'm gonna have to bounce, guys.
lightning
Sorry.
bolts or anything
All right,
like
see you
that.
later, Elf.
no worries,
Oh.
man. We've
Have a
only
good night.
got a few more minutes
You
left
should-
of the show.
Party
But
on.
let me know next time you're going to do a show,
Yeah,
especially if you're going to do a superhero show.
I'll do another one. It was fun.
Awesome.
I need to do one that's planned because I had 4 people show up and like 2 of them I talked to in real life. So,
Fair enough.
all right,
fair
talk
enough.
to you guys later.
Yep, see you
Party
later.
Have a
on,
great
man.
weekend. Enjoy the
Night,
Super
folks.
Bowl if that is your thing.
Yeah, I think sorcery would fit
one last
more.
thing
Okay.
to Crafty. Psionics, I've always understood, were something that actually anybody could learn and focus to do, or basically learn how to do if they had some sort of teacher or manual or book, that it was something that maybe you won't be great at it, but you can still do it. Whereas sometimes magic is perceived as, you kind of have to have a gift, but yet at the same time, I've also heard the same thing about psionics. Some people could do it, some people can't, or
I
some
really think it
people
depends on your
have
setting.
certain abilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think it depends on your setting. You've got some settings where,
Right.
it's like it can be built up, and it's like you you go up in levels, and now you can do this stuff, and then like magic is one way or the other. I mean, I just think of. I do think also that Vancian magic, the like burning into your brain and then using it and it disappears is actually it's a really strange magic system, but somehow it got intertwined with D&D, and it's like arcane, as in like you could actually learn magic like Hogwarts, like that kind of thing. And it's like maybe you have to have a little bit of a gift or something like that, but like most people, like if somebody gets into the secret club, they can kind of figure out what's going on. There's all kinds of things in between, because that's one of them that's in between, is like J.K. Rowling's magic, which is like you kind of have to have it, so there's there is some so there's some like lineal stuff,
It's a racial
but then
thing
there's
almost.
also you can be absolutely or what is it you can be absolutely your magic could be absolutely useless if you don't go to high school.
And that's the premise of that video game that just came out. The guy is starting in his 5th year. The character you're playing.
Oh yeah, the
he didn't go to high school.
he's but see that's pretty.
I think it's lame,
like,
really.
Well, but see, Harry Potter is a rags to riches story. So now they're doing a Messiah story, which is that's just kind of like the next step if you're kind of ramping up the paranormal part of a narrative. Like is your hero Messiah, or are they just special in some way or whatever? That's a pretty universal trope.
Yeah.
Even if they're just abnormal to the circumstance, it's still like you're the outsider coming in, and so now you're gonna have a different story to tell than somebody that Harry Potter was still kind of an outsider, but he also it was much more of a mythical outsider. It's like people wanted to know who he was because he was,
The chosen one.
people had heard. Yeah, but it's a different thing. It's like, yeah, so I guess it's chosen one versus Messiah, but yeah, it's weird.
They're very similar storylines if you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but one's like a what do you call it, a existential, like, is warding off some like existential threat, and the other is like, well,
Try not
you
to
know,
become that.
I got trampled on, and now I'm coming up. And those, that doesn't have to be such a big story in terms of like why it's important. You can just be like, oh yeah, well, this sucked for a while, and now it doesn't suck anymore, and now people know me for it, and yay.
I'm just really sick and tired of everything having these are a different version of Nazi bad
Oh
guys.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Even though that if you actually learn about the Nazis, the thing
Mhm.
is not accurate to the truth of the story.
oh, like, yeah, like democratic socialists. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's what they were. It's
Well,
yeah.
depends on
I
what
mean,
version of democratic socialist you're talking about.
I don't think it's just word version, but that's my opinion. But yeah, it's like, you got the flag with the big symbol on it, and you got all the troops that are the same, and then you've got the people up on the podium. I mean, that's just a very like imperial style of doing things.
Yeah.
I mean, it really didn't change much, except for
From Rome.
technology. Yeah, from like Greek Roman empires and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Holy Roman Empire, about the same.
Well, actually,
Little bit
the
difference in
Republic
technology.
was far more brutal than the Empire, and the Empire was retractionary and consolidative, where the
Well, pretty, yeah, like
Empire
if you
was
get in,
expansionary, and
if you get into
or the
the
Republic was expansionary.
yeah, if you get into the other lore of the Star Wars universe, which
No, I'm
is
talking about the real Roman Republic.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, it's just historical. It's historical stuff. It's like you can portray it from, one side, and then you could portray it from, well, here's the historical records that we have, and do a reconstruction.
I love when I was in school, like grade school, and it says, "Yeah, the Republic was a rapid collapse," and I turned to the teacher and said, "Over 500 years."
Yeah, it's pretty fast. I mean, geologic time, it's pretty fast.
Not in human civilization time.
Yeah.
From a civilization, it's that's incredibly slow.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm like 14 telling this to a school teacher, like, no, 500 years, not fast. Okay, psionics, that's the topic.
Yeah.
Don't even let it just. We bounce around a lot of different stuff. We were, that's what happens on these shows.
Yeah.
If you can stick to a show, then it's probably gatekeepers or table breakers. Otherwise, it's
Yeah. Absolutely. But the topic is psionics, so.
Yeah, but I mean, but any of that stuff. Oh, good.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I mean, there have been times in, like, those kinds of things, either whether they were doing them or they were convincing people that they were doing them. I mean, it's almost a universal cultural thing. Like, it's almost like I'm trying to think of exceptions, but it's like you go from hunter gatherer to tribal, and in tribal you usually have a chief and a holy person. That's usually like how it separates first, and then you go farther, and then you start to have like where you have some level of imperial or some federal system on top of that, and then then instead of it being two, it's three of them, and the fourth is the populace, and it's really hard to find any exceptions to that. Like sometimes it's like sometimes the the gender roles are different. Sometimes the balance of power is different, but that's pretty much like that's just how we do. And I mean,
it really is.
yeah.
I was thinking about that earlier today, of trying to think of a culture basically that didn't have some sort of legends or mythology that went in that direction. And even with now in modern life now, it's becoming even more and more of this phenomenon where you pretty much can't go in. I mean, try going to a swap meet or a flea market or something like that,
Mhm.
and not bumping into half a dozen stands or
Patchouli sellers.
right that are that are trying to do I should say sell products to go along with that. When I was in Mexico last time I was there, it was everywhere, and at the same time there was a church every mile or
Are you
less.
talking about? Are you kind of talking about like what is it?
Third eye
Are you talking
mysticism.
about like psionic accoutrement, whether it's essential
Yeah.
oils or crystals or whatever? I mean,
Yep.
it's like I
Yep.
mean, if you
Everywhere.
can prescribe a metaphysical
Yeah.
property to something, it's a lot easier to sell it to somebody, which
Oh,
is which is
amazing.
and that's a social like. I mean, in my in my game, somebody would that would be like it would be a skill. It would be something like mesmerism or something like that. It's like it's a sleight of because it's not really a sleight of hand skill, but it's like it's there are different techniques, some of them more on the hypnosis side, some of them more on just like
You guys were talking in a previous stream not too long ago about shady players doing creepy stuff in games.
probably.
Sure.
Yeah. That's like dark end of psionics kind of.
Oh well, yeah.
But not
Well, that's
necessarily sexually, but even
I know
like
what you're saying though. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you're saying. This is where
Like
I had
compulsion,
mentioned
right?
this. Yeah, like I had mentioned, this is kind of like the horror aspect of psionics. It's like because
Right.
somebody taking your agency away from you, that could be horrifying, or either horrifying or terrifying to
Yeah.
somebody.
Well, it's not even like to that other
Or-
person. If you were playing a game with romance, because you guys did the last Gatekeepers or whatever
Gatekeeper.
it was, yeah,
Yeah.
on that. If I was playing a psionic character that was sufficiently powerful enough to be doing things with ease,
Yep.
how do I know that the person I'm in love with actually loves me back? If I'm not projecting that emotion into them to show towards me,
Yeah.
Well,
that a lot has to do with like inner character motivation. It's like
yeah,
if you never take your foot off the gas, you're never gonna know.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like that could be a horrifying thing to wake up one day and wonder.
Oh, on the other side, I see. Are you
Yeah.
talking about basically like this sounds like a power that's less in that person's control?
Well,
or-
I'm like wondering, like, if you were sufficiently powerful enough in psionics that
Yeah.
you were doing it subconsciously.
That's what I was talking about. I'm
because
saying it's like less
you-
control on their end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of an interesting that's like an adventure, or maybe not an adventure, but like a mystery hook, right? It's like, there's this guy in town
if you were
or
to-
this girl in town, and just, it's like,
And if you
it's
were to
just
throw in like
supernaturally attractive.
intoxicants or alcohol or something like that,
Yeah.
maybe if you, let down your guard or get drunk or, ingest the right substance or something, you have no idea what you're actually doing when you're unconscious or intoxicated or something like that. Or, even just asleep,
Yeah.
your subconscious could be, running amok with your own powers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah, that
and
would
that's
be-
a yeah, that's a I'm trying to remember how to categorize that. That's like a it is it's categorized probably as a neurosis for the person having it, but
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I have this power, and now you have this doubt of being able to, like, are you a positive force in the world kind of thing? Is this going to get out of hand, and I'm going to, like, kill somebody or hurt somebody, or, change somebody's life for the worse, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, that to me is a lot of yeah, I mean, it would probably not be the greatest thing for a player character to have, but an NPC, that's definitely a mystery or a
Well, it's
circumstance to be
definitely something
interesting
to
to
think
witness.
about, along with Hungar and some of the other people were talking about. Limitations and drawbacks and side
Yeah.
effects to balance out the power level. It can't just be sunshine and rainbows. Because you're a psionic
Right.
character, there has to be prices to pay. Everybody else
Mhm.
has one. Fighters, it's blood. Magic users, it's
I mean,
messing
it's
around with
time.
things. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you
Or
think of
messing around with
Gandalf. I
power
mean,
beyond,
has to go out. He has to go out to the towers, do research for months and months and years. That's part of it.
And he was a
the
demigod.
the
Yeah.
long arm of the law
Hmm.
and the priests. I'm not sure. I think they're pretty much golden.
Well,
Yeah.
with them, it's like it's still well. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you do it, because there's a lot of different ways you can do it. But some of those priesthoods can have like pretty restrictive oaths and things that they have to follow. Usually, from what I understand, if we want to talk maybe like first edition D&D or something like that, it's like they could access any of their powers, and their powers were miraculous, but they were probably like a lower power level overall than something that wizards could start to do,
Actually,
like,
funny
as
thing,
they went
you
up a little
mentioned
bit.
that. Believe it or not, in AD&D, first, second, and I want to say third level spells were almost identical to magic user spells, that they had to memorize them
Right.
and things like that. So you had like spell slots, but the upper level spells were actually the ones being granted by their deity or deities.
Oh, okay.
And most people just like ignored that rule. I don't know of a single person. I was reading through it the other day, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, why don't people do that this way? Just
So
because it just is
I'm
stuck.
actually, yeah, the one that I'm thinking of is like Redbox D&D before AD&D. I'm
Was
pretty sure
Redbox
that
before AD? I thought it was after.
I'm I'm
I think the
trying to
original one
remember.
was before.
Yeah,
This-
I think that the original playset was before. Um, and in that book, or at least that companion book, maybe I'm getting them. I could be getting them backwards. I can go get the
Well,
book,
'cause I have
or
a
just take a look
I
real
have a
quick.
monster manual here. Let me see
Yeah,
if I can find it.
just one sec.
Because
I'm gonna go look for my book for a sec.
I always thought AD&D came out after White Box, and then
well, Red Box. Red Box?
well, White Box is the original.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the Monster Manual came out in '77, and it was the original, the first book of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And in between the two might have been the basic box set with the dragon and the wizard and the fighter on the cover. The
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's been a really effing long time since I've played, right?
what do
And
you play normally?
I haven't played in over a decade anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, we got to fix that, my friend.
Yeah, that's why I was really excited when Hungar said he was gonna start up a game, but then he's been in and out for the hospital. But yeah, I got in when they released the red box for 4th edition. Like I played role playing games in high school, like little riffs, some D&D, but like just pickup games here and there, mostly riffs. And BattleTech, Mech Warrior. And then the 4th edition came out. I got the box. I was going to play with my brother because he played D&D. I played the sci-fi games. He played the fantasy games.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I was like, fuck this, I'll play this with my brother. And I bought this box, and we couldn't make heads or tails of the thing. Like, literally couldn't figure it out. So he pulled out his old 3rd edition books, and we played with some friends he had at the comic book store that used to be across the street. And
Thanks,
then,
Crafty.
and then I started playing with other people in other groups, and that lasted up until 2013 or so. Yeah, 2011, 2012, roughly a decade ago. And then, yeah. But no, all the times I played fantasy, psionics never came up. Neither did druids.
Is that the one you mean, Crafty? Sorry to interrupt, man.
No. Totally understandable. But yeah, so when it comes specifically to the way D&D handles psionics, I have not the slightest clue. I know how they were handled in Rifts and a few other games here and there, but specifically D&D, I have no idea what the limitations are, extents are on them, because I've never encountered them. I've skimmed through the rules more than a decade ago, but yeah, I can only tell you.
We're gonna have to fix that. We're gonna have to fix that and get you into some
Yeah.
games that.
But that's been no secret. I've mentioned that a few times in bids and chats. I think I even said that to you before in a Hungar stream.
Okay. Sorry,
You're still looking for the information. I'm just kind of trying to keep the video from being silent.
No. I always, my experience has only been from X to X, and then, when 3rd, 4th, and 5th came out, I only recently found out that there was a 4th and 5th edition.
Yeah.
I mean, literally in the last year. Before that, I was happily in my own little game world. Didn't go to game stores because there weren't any.
Yeah.
But
like
Crafty posted all the info for us, Kevin.
Okay.
Yeah, that 4th edition box set was the most expensive incomplete set of D&D dice I ever purchased.
Really?
Yeah, it was like $35.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to find if there was a list of spells that a cleric could use without having to prepare them, and that they could use. Let me see here. And this is actually the book that I was thinking of is first edition AD&D.
Yeah, advanced.
Yeah.
Um,
It gets a little confusing because you did have basic come out first, like the basic set, and then you had Dungeons and Dragons come out with the Mystara setting, and then there was kind of the breakup, and then you got AD&D. I'm not really 100% sure on the other side of the.
I deal with too much real world politics to give a shit about corporate politics. So.
Well, this was like, I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
how much I would call it corporate politics. This is more just, this is what happens when you have a company with more than 2 people or more than 1 person in it.
Yeah, well, that's politics is the interaction of people and systems. So I consider 2 people arguing and breaking up a company to be a form of political action. But yeah, no. The reason why I say AD&D when you are Advanced Dungeons and Dragons when you say AD&D, because I use a lot of acronyms in my day, so I try to reiterate what they stand for as often as possible, or I start mixing things up.
Okay. Yeah, I must have been mixing things up from third through fifth edition actually. They'll have a list of spells that are they basically get all of them, and they don't have to
Take care, James.
memorize them, but it's a small list. It's like some of the things that are just like, make some water, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that like the book that I was thinking of, Shadow, was AD&D first edition, and but yeah, I was just getting it mixed up. So I guess you just roll for spells just like you would as a magic user, and there's definitely some overlap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really play a huge amount of White Box or even the this basic version. I actually got this after I'd already been playing AD&D, and we always refer to it as the kiddie version because in comparison, it was, you could go up to third level, and we're like, third level, what the hell? I got fifth level characters already in it, that sort of thing, and it was a nice little, one book, sort of thing. No, we're not going to be juggling any chainsaws. We're actually a little bit over, but we're going to hang out for a little bit. Yes, we did, Sean. We did mention AD&D quite a bit tonight.
It's just the last 15 minutes has been nothing but
like a lot of the a lot of the OSR adjacent, like D&D, AD&D stuff. Yeah, there's a lot for what would be considered
this guy.
more the basic rules. But I was actually on talking a lot this week on the Professional Game Master Society Discord, and somebody was talking about, well, why would I want to invest myself in emotionally in a character that's probably just going to die? And I didn't say it to her, but me and another friend were talking about it later, and he said, well, characters aren't interesting if they die. That's the difference. It's like if your character dies, it wasn't interesting. So there's no reason to get like emotionally attached to any character. It's like you are a character in a story, and really like the whole of the story is what you should be worried about. And it's like a character is a character. It might come and go. I think a lot of like, well, with fifth edition especially, it's like you're just this little unit of like 4 people, and like that's your that's the grand total of your group. But like in OSR and AD&D products, it's like, well, this wagon isn't going to drive itself, and I don't know about you, but I'm not an expert wagon, I'm not like an expert
horsewhipper.
Horsewhipper. So it's like, that's why you have hirelings, you have you have camp followers, you have you basically have a little, like a little kind of hunter-gatherer group, I would say, or more around that 10
you
to
got
12.
your 4 or 5 adventurers and 4 or 5 helpers,
right? And yeah, I think that just that interaction and that kind of like understanding of what is adventuring actually kind of gets lost, because a lot of people have never done something where it's like, okay, we got a wagon of stuff, and we got to get from A to B, and it's like we got to break camp and all the stuff that you have to do with that kind of thing just to be able to do it in that like tech level and that kind of thing.
Well, while you were looking for that book, I was telling Shadow how I hadn't played in about a decade, right?
Mhm.
And the reason why I got out of the last game and it put me off for a long time was the last game I was in. Um, we were sitting around and I was playing a character that I really wasn't into. I told this story earlier on Hungar's stream. A character I wasn't really into, but I was still having fun with the game, even though I hated the character I was playing.
Mhm.
Um, so I stuck it out. I'm that kind of guy. Like if everything's not a-okay with me, but it's not an absolute nightmare, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna be in because the group is having fun, right? And I have no problem with a little camaraderie.
Mhm.
And then our party captured, like we were doing this epic continuous dungeon kind of thing, right? We're going after this dark lord that had taken over an old
Mm.
dwarf mountain.
Yeah.
And we were trying to clear it out. And we were like going to the nearby town, coming back, clearing out a bunch of goblins, going to the nearby town, coming back, do that kind of thing, right?
Right.
It was fun, even though somewhat repetitive. Um, and we captured a couple of lizard men and an orc, but the orc was a runt and a little smarter than the average orc, right? No matter. They were our prisoners. We were taking them to our base camp on the surface to interrogate. And we got attacked by, I don't know, an ent or some fucking weird thing like that.
Yeah.
And it came down to the slightly smarter, slightly smaller, slightly weaker orc helping us out in the fight. So I'm like, can I have this character? Can I have this orc as a playable character? And she was like, yeah, sure. Roll for it. I rolled a 20. I got to keep it. It's like, next session I'll come with a character sheet. I have no idea how to do that because it's second edition. I was like, just make it a human character sheet with a couple of down points on intelligence and like an extra point in strength.
Yeah.
This works. It's good enough for a smart orc and a weak orc, right?
Right.
It's good enough. So
Yeah.
we're playing this. I'm playing these two characters now. One I hate, and one I'm really having fun with because it's off the cuff and insane. And then maybe 5 sessions go by, and my original character should have died. I put in quotes, should have died, because he got a sword through the gut, and was then resurrected, even though I asked for the character to not be resurrected. And then about a dozen sessions later, the character dies again. Total natural death. And I really don't want this character to be around anymore. I'm playing two characters as it is, one I'm having fun with and one I'm not. Please let the one I'm not having fun with die already. So I just left the group and it put me off of the game for a very long time.
Yeah, those kind of experiences can. But yeah, that's for me. That's just kind of like a fun factor thing. I mean, if your DM wanted to keep them around, well,
but
why
there
you
was
gotta
no
keep playing them?
I don't even want to get
You don't need
into
to keep
that.
playing them.
Yeah.
Characters need to die at some point.
Yeah.
Um,
Or retire.
if they-
I mean, there's all
Yeah.
kinds of different things.
He was
that
too
they could do.
young to legitimately retire.
Well, I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but there's plenty of fighter types, especially that
Yeah.
get retired pretty early.
Well, he was a fighter.
Connor,
but-
you missed a whole bunch of meanderings all over the psionic
Yeah.
conversation. We're actually gonna cut the show here because I have to get over to Nathan's channel. But you guys are both welcome to
Yeah.
come back next Saturday because I have a lot
Mhm.
more I want to talk about when it comes to psionics,
Yeah.
especially the solution to the problem. That being, how can we? Sorry, Shauner, you are also always welcome to hang out with us. If you want the link, I'll send it to you next week. You too, Sean, if you're interested. I want to talk about the solutions, how we can, you know, I guess kind of like the romance episode. How can we make psionics not weird? You
Sure.
know, bring them into, you know, the not necessarily the forefront, but just make them a thing that you know is a possibility. Who knows? There's probably a lot of people out there that would, you know, maybe look at it as a whole new horizon that they can, you know, try to reach out to in the gaming world. There have been a lot of games out there that have done psionics poorly. Maybe we can come
Yeah.
up with some house rules to share amongst the, you know, the people out there in TV land, and see what we can do to just, you know, at least try it once, you know, so you can say, you know, why you don't like it or why you're never going to allow it. Because, you know, you guys were talking about, you know, third, fourth, and fifth edition. And while I did play one fifth edition game, I don't think that's a
I've never played it.
entirely fair, you know, representation of what it is. So one of these days, you know, after all the Wizards of the Coast nonsense dies down, I'll find a way to get a third, fourth, and fifth edition book
Yeah.
and see for myself. But right now, not gonna happen. Sorry, guys.
It's really easy, Shadow. I mean, if you played at D&D, it's simpler than that.
No, I know.
And it's a great
I like to
superhero
be,
game.
I like to be able to at least, you know, be able to, you know, say I've read it. You know,
Yeah.
I know it'd be like trying to review a movie that you never watched. It's
Right.
really just.
I think just
you know,
some of the more board gamey spells and that kind of thing are going to be the only thing that you're not really familiar with in
Mhm.
5th edition. Like almost everything else is pretty like when I think of AD&D, I mean there's a few little things that maybe are a little bit different, a little more standardized, but you pretty much got it all. Because that was
Sure.
one of the big things with 5th edition was they wanted to make it to where people that were coming from any other edition of D&D could, you know, like feel comfortable with the core of it. But yes, you know, we talked about sci-fi for like 14 minutes. And so
I know. I knew
Shauner
it was
should be
gonna.
happy.
I
But
knew it
no,
was going to devolve mostly into fantasy, but
well, I
I
like
kind of wanted to do that just because, you know, there needs to be the contrast between the two.
Mhm.
Well,
I like
Why?
to-
psionics work in sci-fi.
and I
Oh,
yeah, and it's like
right.
I do like to talk about sci-fi. I just find that you know, it's like when I think about sci-fi, it's like think about Star Wars. That's not really even super sci-fi. Neither is Dune. Like they're kind of more
Sci fantasy.
yes. And well, some of the things that I think of that are a little bit harder science fiction, almost all of them are kind of military bent. You know, it's like you've got the
Starship
Star Trek
Troopers,
stuff and Starship Troopers, and you have
Alien.
Stargate and Babylon 5 and all of those. I mean, yeah, there's some of the I guess it's kind of like more the Rogue Trader stuff, you know, if you want to kind of like have a 40K, you know, comparison, but you know, just a lot of the
Grim,
normal
uh,
stuff.
catch the message I just sent you on your phone. I've been trying to send you the link all night, but we'll have to bring Grim in here next week as well.
Sounds good.
For those of you who just asked, I have no idea what Nathan's doing tonight. I won't know till I get there because I've been hanging out here tonight. But if you haven't, it's the Quantum Show with Nathan Allen or something to that effect. I always get it like mixed up. It's either Nathan Allen from the Quantum Show or vice versa.
Can you
Brain
drop a
not
channel
working.
link into the chat?
Um,
Like the normal
no,
chat?
I can't because I'm on my tablet. My other device is downstairs.
Oh, okay.
But if you type Nathan Allen and Quantum Show, you'll find it. He's a blonde guy like me, ponytail. It's a great way to, you know, cleanse the palate of all things gaming and go into the next week. No,
Yeah.
the link failed, Graham. I don't know how that's.
Sometimes that happens, but yeah, thanks for hosting Shadow, and I'll see you next week. We'll talk a lot more
Party
about
on,
fire.
guys.
Justin, you too. Everybody have a great weekend. What's left of it. If you're going to watch the Super Bowl, enjoy that too. And
Heck
we
no.
will
Go
see you guys
Spurs,
all next week.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
All right, see you later.